Hello and welcome to Book Lovers Companion, the podcast about authors, books, their craft and more. My name is Edith, and joining me for this episode from across the pond is author Raymond Paul Johnson. Hello Raymond and welcome to Book Lovers Companion.
Well, hello Edith, and thank you for inviting me. And I am across the pond in Los Angeles.
Yeah, quite far, but technology makes it happen.
Great.
Thank you for making time for me. And like I said before we started recording this episode, your book, Conspiracy Ignited, which came out in summer this year.
The end of June, right?
Is quite a book. There is a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on in this book. And my first question, after reading the book and reading the parts where it says about the author, let me ask you, because that came up with another author, how much of yourself is in your character?
A lot. But to be fair, it's also a composite of other people I've known. But yeah, primarily I'm a Hemingway believer, and writing what you know, I think, is the best way to proceed. And so when I went into the book, by the way, I've published a lot of nonfiction, but this was my first fiction. And so I just decided that I would write what I know and I would write what I enjoy. And I've always enjoyed reading thrillers, legal thrillers, crime thrillers, and Hemingway, of course. And so that's it. I, short paragraphs, short sentences, short chapters, hard hitting, and hopefully people have trouble putting it down.
I did, to be honest, because I was most interested how you end the book, how it all, how you put it all together, the different characters and what's going on, and how they find out what's going on. But Raymond, you are the best person to tell our listeners a little bit about the book. What can you tell our listeners without giving too much away, of course?
Of course. Okay. Well, I mean, primarily, it's a legal thriller. And if I was going to do an analogy to somebody's writing, it would probably be Michael Connelly's Lincoln Lawyer. The difference is the protagonist in my novel is a civil litigation or a civil trial attorney. And that's kind of new to the genre because most times it's either a corporate lawyer or a criminal defense lawyer that's the protagonist, if you think about most legal thrillers. On the other hand, to my surprise, when the book was read and reviewed, people have now called it a crime thriller, an action thriller, a political thriller. And I never even thought of it as a political thriller, but it is what it is. But from my point of view, it's a legal thriller. And the protagonist is a civil trial lawyer who is basically going about his business and one evening gets attacked by who knows what. He doesn't know what it is, except that he's out by a boat and it's somebody in a diving outfit, and he's almost killed. But all that he's told is get off the case. And of course, he has about 12 cases going at once. He doesn't know which case it is. So that's one of the little mysteries in it, which one of his cases caused the attack. I could go into the antagonist if you want, because I enjoy writing antagonists. Would you like that?
Yeah, but leave it a little bit for now, because you said it's a new kind of depicting your protagonist. He is, unlike others, a civil lawyer, and he has more than one case going on. I suppose that's true for most lawyers, having more than one case going on, and he has to do with a lot of insurance questions and helping people get compensation for what's happened to them. Through, I don't know, there is this one case with the Toyota company, and there is another case where key fob didn't work the way it should work. And it does seem for most of the people, yeah, okay, these are cases, whatever. But there's a lot of money involved. And isn't it true that most of the time when we think of crime thrillers or thrillers in general, follow the money is always a good advice?
Well, following the money is a good advice, but as you mentioned, it really came down to two things, and he couldn't ever figure it out what they were until the very end. One is an insurance issue, which amounted to billions of dollars potentially in costs for the insurance industry, and the other was a product liability matter. And I spent 35 years all across the United States trying product liability matters against automobile manufacturers and aircraft manufacturers. And this happened to be against an automobile manufacturer. And that's high stakes litigation. I mean, there's a lot of money. There's millions at least involved in each of those litigations. And they go on for 3 to 5 years. So, he has his own firm, just as I did. And one of the things I tried to do was get the reader in understand what that law firm, a civil law firm, is about, because many don't. And so I went into what the paralegals and the lawyers and the interactions they have, and how it's really a team effort. It's not just a solo lawyer. And of course, one of the big characters in the book is his investigator, who's also his best friend, Terry Powell. And my readers have told me they all love Terry Powell. So we'll see how that goes. But he may end up having his own book before we're finished.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, he's an interesting character. Also, his larger family. Let's put it that way. Which comes into play at the end of the book, but I won't give it away. So people, please read it, find out what I'm talking about. It was also very interesting, and you also incorporated in your book those flashbacks your main character had. He was a pilot like yourself,
combat pilot,
right? In Laos and Cambodia. And he has these flashbacks, and it's also quite vivid how you describe when he knows they're going to come. I have no better word to describe it. He feels it in his body when it's time for another flashback, and this must be really hard. I mean, he has this. He goes to a psychiatrist to talk for the first time, to talk about how to cope with that. I mean, even years after, I mean, what he has experienced, it stays with him. You can't just put it away and be done with it, can you?
No, you can't lock it away. And I'm also a member of the American Legion, which is a veteran, big 2 million member veteran society in the United States. And their biggest mission right now is called Be the One, and that's about post-traumatic stress disorder. It's about suicide, and there are some very interesting statistics, like the number of veterans that are committing suicide is absolutely we can't sustain it, and so we're doing a lot of work through the American Legion, and so I wanted to bring that into the book. Because you're right, it's not go to war and then for 2 or 3 years have some bad nightmares. It stays with you until you're done your stuff on Earth and it's finished. And that's one of the things I wanted to show. And he deals with it, and each of us deals with it in a very different way. he was not inclined to go to psychiatrists, but it got really bad when the antagonist started pulling on him and his family and his friends and threatening everybody. And so he did. As you know, I don't want to give too much away, but that doesn't work for him. But good news, he does find a method to deal with it, at least on a temporary basis. He'll be back in book 2, by the way. So, yeah.
It's good to know. And I also have to recommend you on your depiction of the furry overlords. In the book, his dog and his cat. Quite fascinating. Yeah. Just like yourself, I've read you yourself live under the paw, just as we do at Book Lovers Companion.
I know your CEO, right? Maurice.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, my wife and I have 5 rescue cats and 1 dog who's very frustrated, but with 5 cats,
Yes, I can imagine that. And you.
But he's right here at my feet right now. He's right there. Yeah. He's being a good boy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. He knows what's good for him. Yeah, our CEO is downstairs at the moment, having another horizontal life pause.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cats. Okay, yeah. Cats are cats. Oh, yeah. I know cats. and so I had to put one in the book. And his name is Mister.
Yes.
And his dog companion is Pistol. That's his name. And they actually play an important part, which I can't reveal in the book.
No. I would say they are combat cat and combat dog. But readers, please read it. It's fascinating. And you followed the rule, never kill a dog in a book.
Those are the 2 rules. Yeah. 2 rules of thrillers are never kill the dog and get the gun right. If you're going to talk about guns, get them right.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And you did it splendidly. You said the antagonist. You've touched a little bit upon the antagonist. And when we talk about the antagonist, it was, on the one hand, surprising who it turned out to be quite honest. I wasn't sure at the beginning who it might be, but then I thought, I think I know. Was right then. It seemed unlikely, but coming to think of it, it's not, given the personality of your antagonist. What can you tell us about this person in particular? Again, of course, without giving too much away.
His name is Calvin Hess. You find out in the book, and this isn't giving too much away, that actually he was a commando medic in Iraq. He had some traumatic things occur to him and his family, and he switched off. He actually takes on, he's a very dark character. Although he has some things, like he likes ants. I mean, ants are important to him. He keeps an ant farm, but people not so much. And his trade became, using his medical background and his commando background, he kills people without leaving a trace. And all of the assassinations that are in the book were very interesting to write, let me tell you, because I wanted them to be, I didn't want to make things up. I wanted to come up with ways that someone could do what he did. And that was fascinating. It took some research, but to me, it was fun to write in that sense. So yeah, but he is a bad guy.
He's also a, strange guy. Yeah. Let's put it that way.
Psychotic, maybe.
Maybe. Probably. Yeah, probably. But there are also 2 people he works for. And that's what I meant when I said I wasn't quite sure who is really behind all that. He calls is it his partner, his boss, his eminence?
His eminence. His eminence is More his boss, but
boss.
I do understand you saying his partner because they have a relationship that's almost equal, but not
Yeah.
quite.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, one of the mysteries in the book is who the
Who?
heck
Yes,
is
exactly. Who
sentence?
is he? Exactly. Yeah, that's what I couldn't figure out at the beginning. I thought, But then I think I got it right in the end. It wasn't much of a surprise then, because the way you describe, their traits and how they behave and what they do, I think I got it right then. And these are people who are, or the idea they have, or what, for the actions. The motivations for the actions, let's put it that way, is for a so-called better America, a different America, a better America, as Hess called it. And
Yes.
the ends is okay if you kill people, because in the end, for the greater good. Yeah, well, the greater good, and what you do on the way to achieve the greater good, you can accept it, or he thinks he can accept it, and the people he works with or for also think they can accept it. And like I said before we started recording, it might seem a bit outlandish, but when you think of what is going on and what is happening, it's not so outlandish anymore, is it?
Not in this day and age. Remember now, I started writing this book back when I was practicing full time as a trial lawyer, and so I started it many years ago, but I never could really put it together until the pandemic hit, and then I cranked back on my practice and actually went full time writing. So I I'm trying to say that it's more vivid today than it was even 5 years ago, certainly 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I wish I could say I'm such a luminary that I figured it all out and got ahead of the game. But the fact is, it is what it is. And yeah, it's resounding right now. My readers tell me, my God, this is right out of the newspapers. This is like, how can you figure out, how can you do what you did in a book and then we read about it the next day in the paper? Well, sometimes authors get lucky. I guess I got lucky. Yeah, I know. It almost seems like I knew 3 years ago what I knew today, and of course I didn't. But it plays right into today's headlines.
That's the scary part, isn't it?
I think so. That's why the book is called Conspiracy Ignited. It's it's scary, but it can be. The book, like many books, is about good versus evil, and it isn't easy. But I'm a person who believes in the goodness of people, and so in my book, good will always prevail. I mean, but evil can get very evil.
Oh yes, indeed, and it's astonishing, isn't it? And let's call it it. We know what we're talking about when we say it, politically speaking. It can happen everywhere. It's a reminder, because the United States are not immune.
Oh, today, absolutely not, and neither is any country. I mean, look at the countries that. Well, I mean, in a political sense, they're tending to the right, but and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you tend to an autocrat situation, now you're on the danger. We don't want to repeat World War II.
Yeah, let's hope not.
Once enough.
Yes, absolutely agree. And also the way politicians behave. I mean, when we look at the elections here in Austria, I mean, the right-wing party had the biggest win in its history. But sometimes people make more out of it than it actually was. I mean, they had 2% more than the Conservative Party. And how it looks now, they will not be part of the ruling system because nobody wants to work with them. So it's out of the question. So it won't
Well,
happen.
I just got back from India, and I knew nothing about India politics before I went, but their prime minister is a fellow named Modi, and
Narendra Modi.
just study that Modi. So anyway, it's here, it's around us. The book almost predicts it, but that is some happenstance.
Unfortunately, absolutely agree. And how would you describe the different kind of personalities you have in your book? How would you describe, for example, your protagonist compared to the antagonist and the people in the background? What kind of personality makes them happen, so to speak? What is driving them, and what kind of personality does it need to become what they are?
Yeah, maybe I have to back up just a little bit, and I don't want to get ahead of your questions, but I think it's important for readers to realize I'm a pantser. You know, the person who writes by the seat of their pants, as opposed to a plotter that outlines. And sometimes that's called organic versus outlining, whatever you want to call it. That's me. I do not outline anything. I do not know how a scene ends. When I start a scene, I don't know how a chapter ends, and God knows I don't know how the book ends. So what I'm trying to say is I follow my characters, and I do that. It's a selfish reason. I've tried the outlining thing because I've written nonfiction, and being a pantser is a lot more fun because you get surprised as you write, and things go different ways. It's one reason why reviewers, I think, have said, the Midwest Book Review, which is a respected reviewer, said that it's got more surprises, twists, and turns than a Coney Island roller coaster. So, I mean, that's quote unquote. And the reason is because I didn't plot it out. I didn't think about it. I just let it go. So getting back to the people, I follow the characters, but you have to have characters to follow. And one of the things I tried to do, and I don't know if I succeeded, readers will have to tell me, there was a point where I wanted the protagonist, Eric Ridge, and the antagonist, Calvin Hess, to be similar but totally different, to be almost mirror images of one another, to be inverse. And that was in the back of my head as the characters were telling me what they're going to do next. I know that sounds strange, but they were. And but in the back of my head, that I want to happen. I mean, they both have military backgrounds. They're both combat veterans. One's a lawyer. The other one is more into medicine, but one could say they're both professionals, quote unquote. So yeah, if you look at the book that way, and I'd be interested to get feedback from readers on this, that was in the back of my head. And then after that, it just where the characters went with the book. And of course, from that, I get my plot. The plot is nothing more than a 1 or 2 sentence idea at the beginning. And
yeah, I do.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It does. Okay. I mean, I do get where you come from when you say your character surprised you.
Mm-hmm. And not only them, but what they did sometimes is just like, whoa. But I tried to be logical. I mean, that's the one rule I have. I don't want to go off the edge where somebody reads it and says, oh, that couldn't happen in a million years. No, I wanted to stay somewhat on the edge. By the way, the protagonist's name is Eric Ridge. If you think about ridges and edges, there's a lot of that going on in the book. But I wanted to stay on the edge of logic, at least, and try not to go over into the illogical.
Yeah. Would you say that these two characters are far more settled in their personality than, let's say, the people in the background who command Mr. Hess. Because his boss partner, he doesn't seem to me like a settled personality. He seems to have a huge chip on his shoulder. And she tries to overcompensate, unlike Hess.
Yeah. Certainly the protagonist and the antagonist, Hess, were far more well developed in my mind, especially by the time I got to the end of the book. His Eminence was always meant to be a very strange, mysterious character. And I do get into his background, of course. I do give backstory. Yep. I sprinkle it in towards the end, especially. But that to me, there's a lot of his I can't even say it. His eminences around the world. There are that character. I mean, basically, he's in it for himself. There aren't a lot of Hesses. Maybe that's good. And maybe there aren't a lot of Eric Ridges. I don't know. But I agree that the Hess character was much more well developed, I think, than his Eminence. But I did that intentionally to create mystery.
But also as a person, I think in real life, people like his Eminence, like you said, they are around. Too many of them, probably. And what is it about them? I often wonder, what is it about them that draws people to them? Because when you look at it, like you said, he's such a... thinking of his background and thinking what he does and so on and what he says and how he behaves, you think, oh, come on, you little nitwit.
I mean, he's into himself. He's into himself totally. I mean, he makes excuses and he talks about greater good, which by the way, I'm glad you latched onto greater good because that was an important concept for me in writing the book. And I tried to show the both sides of the greater good because the greater good, there's nothing wrong with it except that it can be taken to an extreme.
Absolutely.
Who's greater good? Because every time you have a greater good, there's people in the background that are not sharing that greater good, right? Because it's relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. And
excuse me.
Absolutely. And how do you justify what you do? And what do you have to sacrifice?
And his Eminence is well into, and Hess to an extent too, but his Eminence is right into, we're doing this for the greater good. But the greater good is what he thinks the greater good is. And so you get very perverse actions,
I think in a sense, Hess has a more pure idea. Pure idea of what the greater good is than his Eminence. Because I think for him, the greater good is elevating him to a place where he can have all the power he wants and can do whatever he likes without having to answer to anyone. That's not, I suppose, how Hess sees it. He really believes. I think he's a true believer in a sense.
He is. Excellent. I mean, Hess is a true believer, just like Eric Ridge is a true believer. Yep. They just don't believe the same thing. They, like I said, mirror images almost. Yep. If you want to think of it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned at the beginning research, not the legal part, but I suppose the medical part mostly for the book.
I did a lot of research on the medical part because I had to come up with methods of assassination that wouldn't leave a trace. And, if that was easy, we'd have a lot more weird things going on in the world. But there are ways and there are types. And so I turned to things that are real, like the Marbury virus and things like that can do the job. By the way, I'm halfway through the second book now, and I had to come up with a few more. So,
okay.
It's interesting. And I try not to make them the same. In other words, well, I guess if I go into it, I give away too much, so I won't go into
okay.
it. But yeah.
And did you consult any experts? Like medical examiner and such?
I spent 35 years being a trial lawyer. Most of my cases had 6 experts on them, maybe 12, some 12 experts. So I've spent the last 3 or 4 decades with experts in every field. So I did not, well, there was one exception. I did call a fire expert that I've used in many trials about the fire scene at the beginning, because I wanted to make sure that what I was describing could absolutely, no doubt about it, happen. I was a little worried about that. But he confirmed, oh, yeah, the way you do it, it can happen. And, I'm talking about the ability of rubber to ignite and things like that. I can't, in the inflatable, I can't get too much into that, because
no, of course not.
That's the attention getter at the front of the book.
Yes, yeah, true. I agree. People should read it. Not let us tell you everything. You should read it, dear listeners. Absolutely. And like we said before, there's so much in this book. And you said you would describe it as a legal thriller. Your readers, your reviewers describe it as action, crime, and political. I would say they are right, because there is the legal part, your protagonist being a lawyer, and that's what we learn about his profession. There's a lot of action also. Crime is there. But most of all, what struck me the most was the political thriller. Like we said before, when you look at the state of affairs in the United States and how people reacted, there is so much of the political shenanigans. Let's call it that.
Well, or the motivations behind political actions. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, when that reviewer called it a political thriller, and she was a lawyer, by the way, for an editor, and at first I went, "Whoa, wait a minute," and then I got into it, and I said, "I see where she's coming from." Yeah. But it's not so. I mean, it doesn't talk about Republicans and Democrats or conservatives and liberals. It talks more about motivations behind the political thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also mention in your book people who worked together with Hess and his group of conspirators. And there is this part in the United States that is also quite scary. These groups of neo-Nazis, which are quite active and quite strong in certain parts of the United States. Did you have to research that as well, or did you have experience with groups like that?
I had to research it. I did. I researched, and I researched that quite a bit. I love research, by the way. I'm a lawyer, right? I do love research, and you have to be careful, because otherwise you'll get nothing written if you research too much. But on that particular the aspect of the book that has to do with cults, and organizations like the neo-Nazis, I researched that extensively because I wanted to get it right. I didn't want to say something that was totally off the wall. And I surprised myself. I learned, maybe I scared myself. There's a lot of that type of thing, as you know. And the more I delved into it, the more I realized history repeats itself. And that really was kind of scary to me. And when it's scary to me, I reflect it in the book. So hopefully the reader will be set back a little by it, but and like in a good sense, because I mean, the reason I write a book is to entertain, but another one is I want to plant the seeds for thought about various things, and so that's. I sprinkle those seeds as I write the book.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. And when I read your book, I thought about the one I'm reading at the same time, because usually I read more than one book, always parallel reading. And you might have read...
I do too, by the way.
Yeah, that's what we all do, I suppose, who love books. And
I think
have you read the book by Stuart Stevens, The Conspiracy to End America?
no, I have
Uh,
not. Should
that's
I?
yeah,
Did you
maybe.
like it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm half. I think I'm halfway through. It's not fiction. It's non-fiction. It's about his experience he had as a medical advisor and advisor, also a campaign manager. In a way, he did the ads for the GOP, and how he realized that what happened in the GOP shouldn't surprise him. How it came to be that Mr. Trump is where he is in the party, and he's been working for the party for decades. And when now he looks back on it and he sees things clearer, and he says it was in the making, unfortunately, and he shouldn't be surprised. Although when it happened, he was surprised.
Mhm.
How
Well, I think everybody was. I think Mr. Trump was surprised the first time around when he actually won.
Yes,
You could see it in his face when he
Yeah.
announced it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's real.
Yes, it's real,
real.
and that's what I meant when I said it can happen, and it doesn't make the plots you describe in this book not outlandish at all, not in the least.
Yeah, it's like history caught up with me.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Yeah, had I written it, well, certainly had I written it in 2014, people would think, "What
Yeah.
are you kidding?" You know. But yeah, it dovetailed very nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah, with reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said you
And
are.
I
Yeah.
try to. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, go
I
on.
was going
Go
to
on.
say I try to give my readers reality. I mean, that's what I try to do.
Yeah.
It's fiction.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's entertaining, but I do want it to be real. And it's particularly, I wanted to expose people to the civil trial lawyer hero, and what that means to go through, because people don't know. You take on major corporations, and how do you do that? How does one guy with a team of 12 people take on the Boeing Aircraft Company, or and I hope I got some of that through, because the American system and the jury system allows that to happen,
Yeah,
which I think is
exactly.
great.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I also wanted to mention, because it can only happen, I suppose, in the United States because of your legal system. Like you said, it couldn't happen, for example, here in Austria.
It would be very difficult in any country other than the United States.
Yeah.
And the big key is our Seventh Amendment, the jury system. I mean, that's the key to the process. And yeah, I mean, I'm very proud of our American justice system. It's not perfect by far. It's the best I've seen. I've studied international law and other countries. That's my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, it's different here in Austria, like I said. I mean, we do have jury trials, and we have people who help judges, especially when teenagers and so on, young adults are in front of a judge. Usually it's, what we call Schöffengericht. You can be called as a Schöffe, or you would say as a juror. It's a little bit different. But it can happen, for example. It's
Is that just in juvenile cases or in any case?
It's also in other cases, but mostly I think in juvenile cases. And your job is to give the judge a different perspective. You do not decide, but helping him find the best way to solve the case. A sort of advisor. Yeah.
Maybe bring the community standards into play, because
exactly.
Which is behind the jury system too. I mean, that's the whole idea, really. It's to bring local community standards to play.
Yeah. And I think also in the courtroom, it works different than it does in the United States and in, like, say, I don't know, Britain or somewhere else. You have to be a
Yeah.
special kind of personality as well as a lawyer, don't you?
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. I'm not going to pick. I was just in London on my way back from India, so I'll pick on London. The British lawyers as a group. I mean, I love them, but they are just, they're not American trial lawyers.
Nope.
The
Nope.
barrister is not an American trial
No.
lawyer,
No.
but probably a very good British trial counsel. It's different here. I
Yeah.
mean, given the jury system and it's just different, and I love it. And it certainly can allow good to
Mm.
triumph over evil. But
Yeah.
like I said, no system is perfect either. But
Mm.
the,
Yeah. Of course not. I mean, I'm not defending our system with tooth and nail because that's what we have and that's what we have to live with. And for us, it works.
yeah,
Yep.
well, and other countries too throughout the world.
Yeah.
It's just I hope we never. I hope we never switch. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. And what about in your book? Coming back to the political thriller part. The idea is for the greater good, change America for the better. Whatever better we're talking about depends on who you ask, His Eminence or your protagonist. And do you think, thinking the idea of your book to an end without what really happened, could it have worked in the way His Eminence meant it to work? Do you think it could have worked? Spinning the what if question.
Oh, yeah. You're saying what if His Eminence's vision of America
Mm-hmm.
and obviously he had his eye on the
Yeah.
world beside
Yeah.
America. Could it have worked? Well,
Yeah.
hasn't history told us it could?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking back to World War II,
Mm-hmm.
but then there are other historic. I mean, again, I just came back from India and I learned so much
Mm-hmm.
about Indian history.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it over and over again playing. So yeah, could it work? It could have worked if that conspiracy took off, as
Mm-hmm.
they say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Do you think other institutions in the United States support the wrong people in real life, like in your book?
well. Again, I believe in the good of people. So on a macro level, no. On a micro level, yes. I mean, in the sense that there are local groups. I
Mm.
mean, we used to have, we
Mm.
still do, but we had the KKK, for instance. At one point
Mm.
they were very powerful. So
Yeah.
what can we say? That's history. Today
Mm.
they're not. Tomorrow we'll see. And I don't want to pick on the KKK because there are a lot of other groups too that I could pick on. But it is an example. Is my only point.
Mm. Raymond, what would be your advice for any other author or aspiring author out there?
Well, I think one thing that I happened on, which was interesting. Again, this was my first fiction work, uh, and I published nonfiction. So the first thing I did when I decided I was going to write this was I called the people that I know in the nonfiction world, my publisher, my agent, that sort of thing. And they told me they don't know any people in fiction. They couldn't help me. They want to help me, but they couldn't. So I learned right then and there that the nonfiction world is just a totally different world from the fiction world, at least in the United States. And what we have is it's called querying, and I'm not going to get into the details, but basically a new author uh, has to do cold letters to prospective agents to try to get them to be interested in bringing that work to publishers, trying to get them interested in publishing it. It's a circuitous route, and I looked at it from a lawyer's point of view, and then I was on. I'm a member of a terrific outfit called the International Thriller Writers (ITW), and they have video conferences. And one of my favorite authors is a fellow named James Lee Burke, who's a crime thriller author. I think he's a master. And he was part of the group that we were talking. So somebody said, well, James, you've never been rejected, have you, by a publisher or an agent? He goes, my first book 358 times. And I said to myself, if James Lee Burke can be rejected 358 times, and he is a master of crime fiction, then I have the capability to be rejected thousands of times. So I said, I'm not going there, right? What I did was I entered book awards contests, good ones, legitimate ones, not the ones that ask for a lot of money, the ones that almost have no money. You pay $25 entry fee and you compete against others. And first thing that happened, the Maxi Awards, I was a finalist with Conspiracy Ignited in Thriller, top 5. Then the Clive Cussler International Book Awards, I was a top 10 selection there, which was amazing because I have a legal thriller and I was competing against action adventure stories. And then there's a thing called SIBAs, which is the Chanticleer International Book Awards. And I was first place thriller in the Clue Award for 2024. Well, as soon as the awards came in, I had no more problems finding agents or publishers. I had agents calling me and publishers calling me and calling my agent. So for new authors, yes, I mean, you have to do some of this querying thing, but, write the best thing you can and then enter these contests, the ones that don't ask for a lot of money, because those are not legitimate in my mind. But the ones that have fees of $25, $75, enter them and see how it goes. If it doesn't go well, you're back to your querying. If it does go well, though, you can have a big, big shortcut. And that's what I would suggest. Yeah. Give it a try.
Yeah. And did you also did you make experience with beta readers for your book?
My wife was my alpha reader. She was the first and went chapter by chapter with me. I'd write it, she'd correct it, I'd write it, that sort of thing, and rewrite it. And then once I got past that stage, I had a few beta readers. One Air Force with me decades ago, and so I wanted them to look at the military thing, part of it. And I had a beta reader on certain aspects, but not a full beta. I had no full beta reader. I found it kind of onerous to take a friend and say, hey, would you read my full novel, my manuscript, and tell me what you think? So I did it in parts. That was just me.
Okay.
And so that's how I did it.
Okay. And tell us about your plans. You mentioned book 2 is in the making.
I'm proud to say I'm halfway finished, 56,000 words. Because I'm a pantser, I do a lot of rewriting. I mean, that's the bad part about being an organic writer, is you rewrite. Yeah. You make Hemingway proud. And so, but this first half of the book, I rewrote. So I think it's pretty close. And now I just have to do the second half of the book. And it's a follow-on. It's an Eric Ridge thriller. And my protagonist gets in a lot more trouble.
Even more?
Even more.
Goodness.
Yeah. I know. It's sometimes I feel sorry for him, but that's his job. He's got to do it.
Yeah. Well, true.
But yeah, so I'm halfway finished, and I'm thinking about the third book, especially having just gone to India. I think Eric Ridge in the third book is going to find his way to India because there's a lot to write about there. I was on the Ganges River, and some of the things were just absolutely unbelievable. to see and experience. So, yeah. So I might get Indian to the third one.
Okay, but you also mentioned there might be I don't know, a book of his own for Terry.
A book for
Terry?
well, yeah, that's a recent development. That's only because the reviewers and the readers love Terry Powell. I mean,
Yep.
I didn't know. Terry Powell is a composite like everybody else. But I have a very good friend. He was an Air Force pilot with me. We were also on the space shuttle program together, designing. And so he's still in aerospace. His name is Carrie Powell. Hello, Carrie. And he's a best buddy. His nickname is Kapow. So when I created Terry Powell, guess what his nickname was, right? Kapow. And I don't know. Curry should run for president or something because people seem to love to read about him. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it works. And he probably could handle his own. James Lee Burke, by the way, his protagonist is David Robichaux, but his sidekick is Cleet Purcell. And James's last book was called Cleet. So he actually took the secondary character. That's what's making me think that maybe Terry might have his own book 2 or 3 books down the road. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully, because I want to know more also about his extended family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting, huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
The uncles.
I love that helicopter scene
yep,
the helicopter scene at the end. I loved it. I don't think I've ever enjoyed writing something as much as that. That was fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. And the twins, they are also quite interesting. I mean, you have to put them in the book as well. Yeah.
I got to get them. I got to get them back in. They are not in the second book yet, but I think they're coming back because they're iconic, aren't they?
Yes, you have to.
Instantly iconic twins.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to bring them back, definitely.
Okay, that's it then. When I write the second half of book 2, you got to see the twins pop up.
Okay. Wonderful, splendid. Raymond, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
Well, if you're interested, I have a website, which I think you'll print, but it's just my name, RaymondPaulJohnson.com. And I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter because my publisher says I have to be. No, I can't figure out Twitter or Instagram, but I have like 10,000 people on LinkedIn. So they're all I love them all. And I have a pretty good Facebook following too. So those are my 2 major social media. Yeah. And I'll pop up if you just say Raymond Paul Johnson, it pops up,
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
No, but thank you for giving me the platform. Here I am, a trial lawyer with nothing to say.
When did that ever happen? Never before.
Well, it's the first.
Raymond, it was an absolute. You're most welcome. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. Please don't go away. Wait for me in the green room. I will be with you shortly.
I'll be there. Thank you. Bye-bye all. Bye-bye. Thank you, Edith.
Dear listeners, I do hope you enjoyed this episode as much as my guests and I did. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and tune in again for another episode. Until next time.